Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, giving all honor, glory, and worship unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Kodash. Double honors unto the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone. Salutations unto Achim, upholding the testimony of our Lord and Savior, Yahweh Shemashiach, in both truth and in sincerity. This is Revelations, the 12th chapter, overview. This is going to be a two-part series. I'm going to do verses 1 through 9, possibly verse 10. All right. And it says, I'm going to read the subheading, the woman, Israel. All right. So, verse 1, it says, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, and because this vision was given to John in the heavens. All right, he was witnessing this take place in the heavens. The heavens is where the vision was being manifest. It says, a woman clothed with the sun. Now, the woman represents the nation of Israel. All right. And the sun represents wisdom. All right. So the woman of Israel was clothed with wisdom. All right. It says, and the moon under her feet, and the moon represents understanding. All right. And under her feet represents stability. When you go to the book of Isaiah, the 33rd chapter, it says, and wisdom and knowledge should be the stability of thy times. All right, the moon is also a light, a lesser light, but the sun and moon represent wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. It says, under her feet, and by the way, this was being done on the island of Patmos. All right, while John was on the concentration camp, he was on the prison camp by the Romans. The Edomites put him on the salt mine and this is where he had his vision. All right. Let's see here. It says, under her feet, it says, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars, which is those 12 stars represents the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. All right. Verse 2, it says, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. And the woman being with child was the birth of Yahushua, because Yahushua was to be born. All right, and it's Yahushua who embodies the wisdom, because the Yahushua came from the woman, but Yahushua was the wisdom. He is the understanding. He is, he embodies the moon. He embodies the stars. He embodies the sun. It says travailing because remember, Yahushua comes from the stock of the nation of Israel. He comes from the tribe of Judah. It says travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. And why did she pain to be delivered? Well, we're going to elaborate on the next verse exactly why. The red dragon, Satan, which the red dragon isn't the spiritual demon Satan. The red dragon is speaking of the Roman Empire, specifically via the vessel of Herod, the Herodian dynasty, which Herod was set up by, what's this guy's name? Magnus, what is this guy's name? Part of the triumvirate. They were set up by Pompeius. I believe Pompeius Magnus. All right, which he was a part of Caesar and Crassus, their union. But years prior, they were set up by Pompeius, and they killed off and murdered the Hasmonean dynasty, and they usurped the leadership and the throne of Israel. All right, and the Herodians were Edomites. Okay, They come from Antipater the Idumean. Idumean is Greek for Edom. So these were what you consider so-called white people. All right. But at this point, when Yahushua got on the scene, they looked like black people because they've been marrying a lot of Israelite women. So their children looked like Israelites, but they weren't Israelites. They were Edomites. Let's see. It says, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon. Like I said, it's going into the Roman Empire, which, yes, they are Satan, but it's not talking about specifically. It's Satan ultimately, yeah, but it's really going into the Roman Empire through the Herodian dynasty. All right. It says, red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns. That's talking about the Roman Empire. The 7 heads is talking about the ancient 7 provinces of Rome. All right. Or, yeah, you can apply it to the ancient 7 provinces of Rome. Germania Major, Germania Minor, the Gauls, Hispania, Britannia, Rome, and who am I missing? And Greece and Helen, which is Greece. That's the 7 heads. And then the 10 horns, which they had their ancient, the Sueves and all of that, Vasgoths. I'm not familiar with each and every name off my head, but those 10 horns actually came back via the EU. All right. They came back through the EU. The EU is, you can apply the EU to being the 10 horns in modern times because EU is the revival of the Roman Empire. All right. When people understand that, then the Bible will make a lot more sense. You have to understand that the EU is the revival of the Roman. We're still in Rome. Rome is back. All right. That the EU was established originally in 1958, I believe, 57, 58, it was commissioned under an organization called the EEC, European Economic Community, which it was established by something called the Treaty of Rome, which took place in Italy. They know, and literally in documents, they said they knew consciously they was reestablishing the Roman Empire, the people who did it. They said it themselves. They said they knew what they was doing. Anyway, it says, once again, this is all presented to you through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahasham, Yahushai Bahasham Kodash. All of this in which we have is granted to us through the spirit of prophecy, through Messiah's sacrifice. All right. It says, 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his head, which represents rulership, thrones, all right, provinces, Anyway, verse 4, it says, and his tail drew the 3rd part of stars of heaven, which that's the 3rd part of stars is speaking of the southern kingdom, which is Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, of the nation of Israel, because the northern kingdom were no longer in the land, all right. It says, and did cast them to the earth. Right. We were cast to the earth. This is mainly going into the Roman Jewish wars. So, when you go into the prophecy of the 70 weeks in Daniel, the 9th chapter, I believe it's 9th chapter, 25th verse going on down, 24th, 25th going on down. That's that last week, all right, is going into the Roman Jewish wars, which took place from 66 AD to 73 AD. And that's essentially what that's going into. All right. It says, dragon stood before the woman. Until the heaven, it said, did cast him to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered. Now, this is going back into the time machine a couple years. So you had 70 AD that took place, but about 70 years prior, all right, give or take, you had the birth of the Messiah, Yahushua. And so this next aspect that I'm reading is going into when the wise man from the east, they heard of the Messiah, and they told Herod, and Herod wanted to murder the Messiah because he was scared the Messiah was going to kill him and take his throne, because he knew that he wasn't the rightful heir to the throne of David and to the kingdom, to be ruling over the Israelites. So Herod was scared, so he tried to kill the Messiah. It says, and the woman which was ready to be delivered for to devour her child as soon as it was born. That's what Herod tried to do. All right, Herod was that dragon via the Roman Empire. Well, the Roman Empire is that dragon via Herod. All right, the male child Mashiach, which we don't call that's his chief title, which is Mashiach. We don't call him Christ. That goes into Greek deities and all type of madness. People taking 501c3s and they can't keep it out their mouth. Anyway, let's keep reading. Verse 5, it says, and she brought forth a man child, which is speaking of Yahushua. It says, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. That's talking about after the resurrection. He sat at the right hand of the Father. All right. Okay. Verse 6, it says, and the woman fled into the wilderness. This is talking about from 70 AD and so on and so forth. The Roman Jewish wars, the Israelites fled into the wilderness, which the wilderness you can apply to, they in actuality, they fled into different parts of the earth. But primarily they fled into Africa. They fled into Europe, the Israelites. All right. That's why in the Dark Ages you had so-called black people ruling. Those were actually Israelites, but they also heavily fled. The records account that over 2 million of us fled into Africa. Okay. And we lived throughout Africa, but we largely migrated into West Africa because that was uninhabited land. And so all those kingdoms in West Africa, those were Israelite kingdoms, because that was like in the West Africa was really a wilderness, because people didn't live in West Africa until the Israelites came. That was like kind of how people didn't live in Russia. Like in this time period, nobody lived in the actual landmass of Russia. It was just a wilderness, but people eventually migrated into there during the medieval period, late medieval period. The Kazakhs and shit like that, So that West Africa was the same way. It was a wilderness. Okay. Let's see here. Let's see here. It says, verse 6, it says, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there. Now, the place prepared of God is talking about when we went into America. That's going into our captivity. All right, it says that they should feed her there 1,203 score days. Right. And that 1,203 score days, when you divide that with the Hebrew calendar, all right, which essentially 1,203 score is 1,260. And you divide that by roughly 364, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, give or take, which is based upon the lunar calendar, by the way. You'll get roughly 3.5, I think 3.56, give or take. But in actuality, that's a representation of 350-year period from 1619 to 1969. 1619 from the slave ships of 1619 to 1969, when Abba Bivens established the truth of One West via the Holy Spirit based upon the prophecy written in the book of Malachi. All right, that's what that time period is talking about. All right. The angel Angel Michael. It says, Yeah, we're gonna read that. And yeah, we're almost done. It says, like I said, I'm gonna do a part 2. It says, and there was war in heaven. Now this is fast forwarding all the way up until modern times, like what's about to take place in a couple months when Yahweh shall return. All right, now we fast forward on the time machine, but we still in Rome. We had to fast forward because we had to go back to Rome, which America is Rome, NATO is Rome. So this is what the time machine is doing on the prophecy that John's saying. All right, verse 7, it says, and there was war in heaven. That's talking about the drone technology. That's talking about the actual the aerospace technology, the space technology that Edom, which is the Romans, the Edomites, they have. And they're going to use that to try the lasers. They're going to use it to try to fight against the Messiah and the angels, which you see them and you see UFOs and you say, oh, those are not aliens. Those are angels. And they look like so-called black men. And it's plenty of astrologers that's already even came out and said this. It's on film, white people saying these people were humongous, vigorous looking black people that was in those ships. And we know that through the Bible. But point being, that's who those are, what you see in UFOs. Or when you see in those UFOs, those are angels in those. All right. And they're going to come back and fight NATO and EU and take them out of rulership, because these people have damn near destroyed the earth. These people are going to destroy the earth. They're trying to put a charagma into everybody's hand or their forehead. They trying to exterminate the earth to 500 million. So the angels got to step in. All right. It said, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, fought against the NATO, EU, including America. It says, and the dragon fought and his angels, which is his superior, well, his, not superior, his, basically his elite drone technology. But he's going to try to send, because human beings can't fly in a lot of the technology that they need to try to fight against the angels, because their body will die, and their body can't take that speed and the jerking of the maneuverability that's needed. But the thing is, they still about to lose. Anyway, it says, that's why a lot of that technology they're going to send up there is going to be AI. It says this AI is part of the Edomites angels. All right, it says, and the dragon fought and his angels and prevailed not. Neither was their place found anymore in heaven. So they're going to lose terribly. They're going to try to send a fleet up there to try to fight against the chariots, and they're going to get their ass smacked all up through the heavens. Verse 9, it says, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent. So this is the same entity. This is the guy from the garden. This is that spirit, that Edomite spirit. All right, is that same motherfucker that's ruling the earth right now, the nigga from the garden. It wasn't the actual serpent. This was a man. All right, when that man now, he has a nation called the Edomites, which rule via the economic and military power of NATO and the EU. Once again, this is all presented to you through the spirit and the power of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai B'Hasham Ruach HaKodash. All right, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Says, the dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil. So when we call the so-called white man the devil, oh, why y'all call him? Because you a dumb motherfucker and you don't know the Bible. That's why. The Bible called him the devil. They are the devil. Look what they're doing. These people are tyrants. These people are demons. They're pushing sodomy, trans. What's a theka? I can't say the word. You get what I'm saying? And, the gender stuff. And then that's the damn shit. I can't say that word. Like, oh, that's a bad word. How dare you talk about them? Like, see, these people are the devil. They're trying to, I'm not about to sit up here and talk about what they're doing, because it's going to be here forever. But everybody knows these people are evil. So that's without being said. Anyway, let's see here. Called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. Right, the whole world is deceived by the Edomites. They look at us like we the bad guys, when the Edomites are the bad guys. They are the villains. These people are villains. These people are criminals. It says, he was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Mashiach. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down. Right, because they accused us. They said, oh, they're teased. They're, black Hebrew Israelites. All this other madness that they call us. They always talking shit. They always, they trying to put us in concentration camps. They trying to do this. They trying to do that. They trying to murder us. So they're going to be cast down. It says the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God